it's Min, and welcome to Korean class. 안녕! Hi guys, it's Min. In this video today we're going to talk about how to say some simple phrases, simple sentences in Korean with 3 different forms. Before we start, please make sure that you've mastered Hangul because I personally don't use romanization except for some proper nouns. So if you're still struggling with reading and writing, it's always a good idea to go back to the first series, Learn Korean Phonics with Min. So yeah, if you're all ready, let's start today's lesson. Yeah, the first thing that I'd say is, of course, 안녕하세요. I think all of you guys have heard of this at least once in your life. And I also said this sentence quite often in my videos, so you have heard of it, but actually, 안녕하세요 is not the only way to say hello in Korean. So to explain this whole logic, we first need to understand the concept of these 3 different forms. I personally call them formal, polite, and informal. There would be the other teachers call them with slightly different terms, but the basic idea is the same. So we have these 3 forms to speak depending on how much polite you want to be. First one is formal tone. We barely use this in daily casual conversation, to be honest, but you can always hear it quite often when you watch TV news, when you listen to radio announcement, presentation, like any sort of public speech, and also in business, professional, or even military situations. Simply said, it's used in formal situation, and that's why we call it formal. The second and third one is what we use in casual conversations, and of course the second one, which called polite, sounds more polite than the third one, informal. To distinguish which one to use, you need to think about the familiarity and their age, also maybe their social class. But first, it's always better to start a conversation with polite because you don't really know them. When we are kids, kids tend to start directly from informal, but after you became like adults, I'd say around like 20 something, to start a conversation with informal form would be considered pretty rude, so I do not recommend you to do that. So always start a conversation with polite. Now imagine that you introduce yourselves, each other, had some conversation, got to know a bit, and you can ask how old they are. So 몇 살이세요? Or 나이가 어떻게 되세요? Are the basic sentences that you can use in this situation. And the second one, 나이가 어떻게 되세요? This one sounds a bit more polite. And 몇 살이세요? This one is still acceptable, of course, but personally I'd say 몇 살이세요 when I think they're younger or as old as myself, but not older than me. So you can either say 몇 살이세요 or 나이가 어떻게 되세요 to ask how old they are. And once you got to know how old he is or she is, you can kind of decide how to speak. So if you guys are going to keep in touch, like as a friend, most of the case, the elder one starts to speak informally, and then also the younger one can, but once they feel close enough to each other, like an actual friend. So when you consider yourself as friends, both of younger and older one can speak informally. However, all the situations are about private life, and when you meet someone in a professional or more like official situations, like when you talk to your customer, for example, or to a server at a restaurant, or you talk to a clerk at a store, you talk to bus drivers, whatever, or you got to talk to a stranger in the street. All of these situations, you always need to speak politely, even sometimes formally if you want. So you might see some people talk informally just because they look much younger than themselves. Like when a customer speaks like that, speaks informally to the clerk or to the server at a shop or a restaurant. For example, I say you're allowed to consider them as rude and walk away. So yeah, that's not really polite way to deal with the other people. So don't do that, and don't listen to kind of people, I'd say. Yeah, so as we understood how to distinguish these three different forms, we will see some basic sentences and see how different they are. The first one is the way to say hello or hi, unlike we said 안녕하세요 earlier, but we do have three forms for this one sentence. Let me say 안녕하십니까 when you want to be more polite, more formal, and 안녕하세요 is the polite form. We do say 안녕 for informally speaking. So once again, 안녕하십니까, 안녕하세요, 안녕. Okay, and here it's an expression, another expression to say glad to meet you, nice to meet you. Formally say we do 반갑습니다, and politely 반가워요, and informally say it's 반가워. So once again, 반갑습니다, 반가워요, 반가워. Yeah, so when you want to say hi to someone for the first time, you can either say 안녕하십니까, 반갑습니다 when you want to be very formal and being professional, or you can also say 안녕하세요, 반가워요 if it's more like casual, private, daily conversational situation. So, and it's always better to keep one tone when you speak to a certain person. We don't really say one sentence in formal and the other sentence in informal, something like that. So we don't really mix them up. It doesn't really make sense. But in between formal and polite, it's kind of acceptable to mix two forms a little bit. So 안녕하세요, 반갑습니다. This one is not really considered as long or awkward. So you can either say 안녕하세요, 반가워요, or 안녕하십니까, 반갑습니다, or even 안녕하세요, 반갑습니다. So these are all acceptable. And one more thing, before you have a look at the other expressions, there is a small tip that you can keep in mind. When you speak in formal, the sentence has 다 ending, like what you just said in 반갑습니다. However, 안녕하십니까 had 가 ending because it was a question, so that's different. And also it's a sort of rhetoric question, so you don't really have to answer for the question 안녕하십니까, but you can just repeat it to respond. So like 안녕하십니까, 안녕하십니까, or 안녕하세요, 안녕하세요, like that. And so formal sentences have 다 ending, and formal questions have 가 ending. And polite sentences always end with 요, whether it is a question or not. So 안녕하세요 is a question, 반가워요 it's a simple sentence, but they're both finished in yo, and so do all the other sentences in polite tense. And lastly, when you drop yo off from the polite tense, it becomes informal, like 반가워요. And when you take the yo off, it goes 반가워, which is informal. The third expression is how to say goodbye. We have two situations to say this. So this table here would be help you to understand. I'll put it down here. The left hand side, the first one, is what you say when you stay, but the other one is going to leave. So literally say it means have a nice trip or go to somewhere safely. So you say this to someone who's about to leave, and again, in formal form, we say 안녕히 가십시오. Polite form, 안녕히 가세요. And informally say 잘 가. But as I told you earlier, we don't really use formal form 안녕히 가십시오. It's not even just formal, but it's not really literate, like writing way. So we don't really use that in casual conversation. So you can see it on the road signs, for example, but we don't really speak like that as much. So 안녕히 가세요 would be the form that you will use the most, and that sounds polite enough. So you're allowed to say that whenever, wherever it is. 안녕히 가세요. Yeah, and the second column, the right hand side, is what you say when you're about to leave, and the other one is going to be stay there. So literally means like stay well. And you say 안녕히 계십시오 for formally speaking, but 안녕히 계세요 in polite, so in casual conversation, and 잘 있어 when you speak to your friends or family, for example. Once again, 안녕히 가십시오, 안녕히 가세요, 잘 가. When you're about to leave, you say 안녕히 계십시오, 안녕히 계세요, and 잘 있어. Also both 잘 가 and 잘 있어 can be replaced with 안녕, same as when we say hi. So no matter which side you are on, so you can say 안녕 for either say hi or bye, and even when you want to leave or when you're going to stay. So you can use this 안녕 for sort of every situation. So that's it for today's lesson. For these three forms that we have covered today, they're the most important basic in speaking, and you always need to keep in mind in which form you're going to speak. So it will be very helpful for you to watch and listen when the other people speaking, for example, in TV shows or movies, series. Try to listen how the others speak to each other, and you'll be able to pick up some basic concepts of these honorific forms. And please have a close look at these simple greeting sentences that we covered today. They're relatively short as a sentence, but still longer than the short vocabularies, the short words that we've dealt with so far. So you might make some spelling mistakes when you try to write them down or type them down. So it'd be always good idea to repeat and write them over and over, like more than just a couple of times. So I do recommend you to have a look at it properly more than a couple of times. So yeah, I hope this video would be helpful for you guys. I'll be back with another lesson, so don't hesitate to reach out to me for any sort of questions. I'll see you guys next time, and have a nice day. Bye. 자, 다음 시간에 만나요. 안녕. 안녕히 가세요. Bye. 안녕.